I have master family calendars with me out of town.
Good evening. I'd like to call the board meeting for Wednesday, April 23rd, 2014 to order. Can we have a roll call, please, Mrs. Schlueter?
Sure. Mr. Alexandrovich?
Here.
Mrs. Evans?
Here.
Mrs. Klein? Here. Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mr. Nielsen?
Here.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Here.
And I'm here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Pass?
Yes.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Item 3 on the agenda is a presentation by the Franklin Teens Fighting Tobacco, and we have Mrs. Kathy Hahn. Hi.
So nice to be here. I know so many of you for so many years. So I'm a nurse at the Franklin Health Department and been working in tobacco prevention since 1995. And in order to work in prevention, you need to work with children under the age of 18. So being able to work with the school district has made all the difference in the world, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to get much accomplished. So I thank you for all of that support. I brought some students. They're some of the shining stars of the school district. A few more were planning to come, but have other activities and couldn't make it, so I brought two of our stars. And I'm going to have them tell you a little bit more about our group. I'll pass some pictures.
Thank you.
So my name is Olivia Stahl, and I'm a freshman at Franklin High School, and I've been a member of Franklin Teens Fighting Tobacco since 7th grade, so for about 3 years. So FACT is the youth-led tobacco prevention program of the Wisconsin Department of Health. So I was chosen to be a member of the FACT board, so we're the youth leaders of FACT, so there's only about 15 people on the board, and we make decisions for the little groups across the state, such as us, Franklin Teens Fighting Tobacco. And so as a member of the FACT board, I help to create the campaigns, messages, and activities that the local FACT groups, such as Franklin Teens Fighting Tobacco, do in their communities. Next month, FACT will be recognized as the National Tobacco Free Kids campaign meeting. So I'm very excited and proud to be a part of FACT. So I participated in many tobacco prevention activities in Franklin. I have enjoyed meeting with our state senators and representatives. We educated them about other tobacco products, otherwise known as OTPs, that are made in candy flavors to tempt children. So this board shows how similar OTPs and candy look. So such as the icebreakers may look very similar to the Skulls, the chewing tobacco. And so they're trying to trick the kids into buying things that may look like they're fun and they have colorful messages, and they look just like the icebreakers, as you can see, as an example, but in reality, they're just as dangerous.
Can you show the audience, too? Thank you.
So as you can see, icebreakers look just like the chewing tobacco, but it's just as dangerous. Thank you.
My name is Ileana Smith, and I'm also a freshman at Franklin High School. Along with about 10 other students, I was trained to do Teens Against Tobacco Use presentations. We present our classroom lesson to all Franklin Public School 6th grade students, and we tell them about the health effects caused by tobacco, which you can see on the poster. Many of the 6th grade students believe that most people use tobacco. We teach them the truth, that most adults and most high school students don't use tobacco. We believe that by presenting the facts and being role models, we are making a difference. I also helped with the games we offered at the Forest Park Middle School lock-in on April 11th. We had 3 different games. One of them was Fact Scratch Off, which we used scratch offs and markers. And the winning students received prizes like this shirt, and also the markers and candy you received. The middle school students had answered questions that reinforced the truth about tobacco, and they had fun while learning, and we had fun too.
So along with 8 other Franklin Fighting Tobacco members, we thanked CVS Pharmacy for deciding to no longer sell tobacco. On February 26th, which was one of the coldest days, we held posters, and each person with a part of the message that read, "Thank you CVS for not deciding to sell tobacco." So it was a really cold day, as I said before, but we stood on the sidewalk in front of the store on Rawson Avenue. So the manager came out and thanked us for doing this. We even had an article in Franklin Now about it, if you guys saw that.
Thank you.
Just want to thank you, by allowing us into the schools. I think we're making a real difference. When I began working in tobacco prevention, the smoking rate for Franklin High School students was 38%. We were worse than the state average for teens. The last survey that we had, with the definition of a smoker is someone who's had 1 cigarette in the last 30 days. At Franklin High School, that rate was 8.2%. The state is 12%. We are better than the state average. I think that what the kids are doing and being role models for younger students and really working in the community is making a difference. But like I said, we couldn't do it without being able to work in the schools. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I saw you doing your project at the Forest Park Middle School lock-in, and you did a great job. Thank you, and thanks for coming.
When was that first survey taken? I didn't catch the time on that.
That was the last youth risk.
The 30-some%, whatever, for the smokers at the high
Oh,
school.
what year was
Yeah.
that? It was 95 or 98.
Okay,
Can't remember.
just trying to get the time frame on it.
Just
That's great,
about
though.
20 years.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Thank you. Can I just say, you two were very well spoken. Nice
Yep.
job.
Great. Item 4 is community comment. Per board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of community comment. Would anyone like to make a comment?
Getting sick of seeing me?
No.
I'm here only for one specific thing. I understand that you're gonna be discussing and possibly taking action on the softball, girls softball field at the high school.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry for your name and address.
Jim Lysick, 8756 West Mallard Court,
Thank you.
Oak Creek. Not joking. Am I correct in saying that, though? You're gonna be discussing and possibly taking action on a girls softball field?
Yes.
I thank you for taking this up, because you know, the last time I was before you, that was a top priority for me. And, I hope you pass it tonight. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? Hearing none, we'll move to item 5, approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Item 6, consent agenda. Would any board member like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve items 6A through 6F on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Klein, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski, all those in favor say,
Discussion?
no discussion on consent
Oh.
agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I
Oh,
thought you were going to ask for an
I'm-
abstention.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. yes,
I'd like to
abstain.
abstain from items A and B as I was not at that meeting.
Okay, motion,
We'll just make a notation.
yeah, we'll make it.
Okay.
Thank you. Item 7 is school board announcements. Does any board member have any announcements?
The Education Foundation has an event coming up, the fashion show. I saw there's some flyers out front. It's May 15th, Thursday. It's at Gus's Mexican Cantina, and it sounds like fun, and the information is, like I said, you can grab a flyer on the way out.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, thank you. School board calendar, item 8, annual reorganization meeting on Wednesday, April 30th at Franklin High School at 6:15 p.m. We have a regular board meeting on Wednesday, May 14th, here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m., and a regular board meeting here on May 28th, Wednesday, at 6 o'clock p.m.
Make a couple comments, Shannon?
Yes.
On the 30th, just a reminder to the board that at 5:30 we'll begin a tour of the construction site. We will not need hard hats or anything like that. And we would ask that you use the entrance, the construction entrance, just past the main entrance, as you're going south on 51st Street, and just drive all the way to the back. You'll see a construction trailer, and we'll be there. It's pretty, but just drive all the way back to the back of the school. And then the meeting, the regular board meeting that we're having, we will have that in the library. So we'll just, because we'll be in that location, we'll just get back in our cars and drive back over to the other end of the building and have the meeting in the library.
Thank you. Item 9, reports and presentations. 9A, the approval of the 2014-15 CISA 1 contract, and this is an action item.
You've got a copy of this in your packet, and it's an annual contract that we approve for CISA services. I guess I would ask Paula, do you have any comments you'd like to make on it? Primarily deals with many of the areas you deal with.
There's nothing out of the ordinary in this contract. It's pretty much what we had this past year, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
I have one question about project success. Is this for a student that had special needs?
Yes, it's a special education program.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the 2014-15 CISA 1 contract?
I would make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Schlueter. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Item 9B is the Human Resources Report 2014-15 staffing update. Dr. Miller.
Thank you. In the board docs, you received the staffing worksheet, which is the draft of how we intend to staff for next year. There are a couple in the net difference column, some numbers that need to be taken care of, but I would assure you that the numbers in red in the document are accurate, that the formula seated there is doing the correct calculation. So I'll make those edits. And the process is such that the high school students register for classes first. That process begins in December. I begin working with high school staff and the principal in January. We determine where students will be placed in classes, and then from that point, I work with the middle school and then work with the elementary. So I've gone through that entire process, and this staffing worksheet represents the staff that we will need based on our enrollment that we have now and how students have enrolled for coursework. So you'll see that we actually are reducing the number of FTE, probably by a more significant amount at the high school. And one of the reasons for that is because of some of the changes that we're making in the high school with regard to the curriculum, in particular the science area. And I know that you've had that presentation and you know about the biomedical classes and things that we have added. So what that has done is kids have moved out of the areas of Phi-Ed and Tech Ed and FACE classes, some of those areas, and are now into the science area. And those classes can absorb more students because we have more sections of them. We have far more many sections of science than we would of FACE or of art or PE. So that's why the FTE is reduced there, because those kids are going into the core areas now and coming out of some of those other areas to be a part of that program. I'm not sure if Wendy would want to add anything to that, or or Dr. Zelmer with regard to, you know, the inroads program and then our science offerings for next year.
I think it's just, there's more of a focus on considering your career. And so students are making thoughtful decisions around what they think their career might be. And obviously, many careers go through the science path.
So our maximum class sizes at the high school are not changing?
No, they
Okay.
range between 24 and 27 for the
Kids are
most
just
part.
distributed a little bit more efficiently, I guess you
They
could say.
did. They
Okay.
vary.
And then the FTE reduction, is that going to be handled just with normal attrition and retirements? or-
Correct, right. Yeah.
Just one question.
Exception of one small piece that you'll hear about later.
Okay.
Okay, I know on the staffing report, you indicated that we're switching some position teaching contracts to non-contract positions. I know you're going to be making the change as far as the, that column. Could you also indicate where those other changes are occurring?
Those individuals were already on the right side of this.
I know, but they're going to be in different titles, correct?
Right, they're called specialists, so library technology specialists, you'll see that listed. You'll see reading system specialists listed and math system specialists listed. So those titles are represented there in the spreadsheet.
Then what's different as far as their contract then?
They worked as a teacher with a contract, and they no longer work as a teacher with a contract. They don't receive a contract annually. They work for us as an employee at will.
And how does that, do they fit then in the compensation plan?
They're a part of the teacher framework, but they are not teachers in that they don't receive contracts. But they fit in the framework the same way I fit in the framework, and every other employee fits in the framework, which is you're expected to meet district expectations and you'll receive a general increase.
We saw some changes in the new enrollments with the tech ed program. Is this something that you see as a long-term effect, and do you see the numbers long-term going down in the tech ed area, or was this just kind of the way this, with this new program rolling out, how this whole thing worked? I'm not really sure.
You know, maybe Wendy would be better at responding to that with regard to changes in the curriculum. I'll defer to you, if you don't mind.
I don't see the numbers going down. I see them probably increasing over time. Right now, most of inroads, and as we add strands to inroads over time, will be around those tech ed areas, because that's the career path area. So I think you're going to see that grow, but initially to move into that area, some of the sciences fall kind of in the tech ed area. So we tell you they're science, but they also fall, they're Project Lead the Way courses. And so they're articulated as Project Lead the Way, which is tech ed, but they have a science label. So it's just for DPI's sake, we have to call them science. Many districts ask for dual certification. So you're not really losing tech ed kids, it's just kind of the label. But I do anticipate when the next strands, when we're able to bring them in to inroads, you're gonna see more career in tech ed, just because it's career in tech ed and that's the purpose of that area.
Tech ed is always going to be a huge demand for us, and I think as we develop additional partnerships within our community, it's going to get even stronger. Plus, there are very few schools in our area that even have it anymore, so.
Well, right, and there's been such an emphasis in, on that area and some, investments in that area that's kind of what I figured. I just picked up on the comment about some of the shift, and I didn't know if that was something we were seeing this year, if that was like a trend that you saw might be.
There's generally high demand, but, to Wendy's point about how it's labeled and everything like that, but I only forecast it, but I also hope we see dramatic increases in those programs, because I think there's a high demand for those as you get out into the private sector, the people in terms of career paths.
And you're going to see, there's a mandate, a statute, that by 2017, all students have to have a career academic plan in place, a formal plan, and we're excited about that. We've always done it informally and guided students, but now they have to start thinking about it in 6th grade and shore up a more formal plan. And so they will be looking more carefully at all of those areas too. And some of those, to your point, when Mike worked with that area, they're still in their infancy, so students don't understand the magnitude of them. And FACE is one where we have the whole Pro Start that allows you to walk right out into the workforce at a higher level position. And they just don't understand all of that yet because it's new and there's a lot to consider.
Thank you.
Do you see a need in the future for any other interpreters besides Hmong and Punjabi? Are we,
That might,
Yeah, I
No.
would defer to Dr. Zelmer on that. He actually supervises our ELL program in the district, and there is some news on that, actually.
Yeah, we were able to make a reduction there because, like you said, we used to have an interpreter in Hmong. And Hmong is one of the two languages in the state that there's more of those two languages, Hmong and Spanish. There's more of those than any of the other languages. Even though we have like 30 languages in the state, there's more Hmong and Spanish than any others. And so there are special rules for those two languages, and you need to have, we're real close to what they call trigger numbers in both of them, but especially in Hmong. And so we have interpreters on staff for Hmong, and then we have just a Franklin cultural thing where there's lots of people who speak these languages from India and the Mideast, and Punjabi is one of them. And so over the years, for several years, we had a person who was spoke a couple different languages like that. Well, she got sick and she couldn't work here anymore, and she ended up going back to her home country. And so as a ESL group, we looked at alternative ways of meeting our needs, and found out that Paulette had been in pupil services, had been using a translation service. So we explored all the translation services that were out there and interpreter services that were out there, and found that we would be able to use those services on an as-needed basis. So we're basically contracting out for the services except for the Hmong position, for all the other languages, and it's going to be much more cost-effective, and will probably, in the long run, provide us with services when we need them for a wider variety of languages.
thank you. Any other questions? You don't need action.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. 9C is the business services report. Mr. Milzer.
Yes, we've started the budget process for 14-15. Looking at the timeline, we're really just talking about preliminary information tonight. In June 18th, we'll come back with our first draft of the budget to get us started. And then, since our next meeting after that is just the next Wednesday, we'll let that go till July or July 16th meeting for approval of that. Then we have our annual meeting the 20th of August. And then in October, we'll set the budget and the tax levies. So that's kind of the progression that we'll go through as a board working with the budget. We have some assumptions that we're dealing with, and I tried to enumerate those for you. Of course, we know very little at this point about what's going to happen with students or aid or anything like that. We're projecting an enrollment increase of 20 students, a small increase. We know that the CPI affecting contracts is 1.46 for next year. We know that our equalized value went down last year, which could mean that we would get more state aid, but only if it went down more than other districts in the state, and we don't know that yet. There'll be an increase in the revenue limit of $75 a student, which is about 0.68% for us, and there'll also be a $75 increase in the per student amount outside the revenue limit. Transportation, we had negotiated that contract with a 0% increase. That still continues next year. On the retiree side, we had 5 teachers retiring for next year, which is about half the normal number. So that will be down from the past anyway. Benefits, as you know, we bid out the health and dental insurance. So we switched carriers for health insurance. We'll be having a 4.5% increase there, and on the dental, we'll have a 3% decrease. On those, our current rates, starting in July, will be guaranteed through 2015. On fund balance, we have this project coming up at the high school, the athletic fields, that we've earmarked up to $2.4 million in total for the project, and would be partially offset by the amount that the fundraising group is going to bring in, whatever that turns out to be, 900,000, $1 million, somewhere in there. And then I did want to mention that I don't have the fund balance policy tonight, but I took a look at it, and I think that by adding a statement in there about what the board could possibly use fund balance for, capital projects, big maintenance projects, that kind of thing, adding some possibilities, and then referring the person to the budget documents where each year, like in this section, which also occurs in our budget document, we would say that the district's plan is to put money away for X, whatever that project would be. So the person, by reading the policy, would have a good understanding of what the options were for the board and which option was chosen over time, and they could see if that's changing over time or not. And I think that would give them a good broad idea of what was possible, and then a specific idea of where the district's looking at putting money in the future. So I'll bring that back to you in the future so that we can discuss that and have a discussion on that one. And I'll keep you updated as we go along. We'll be back in June to discuss it further, but that's all I had for tonight.
Okay.
Maybe this isn't appropriate, but I'd like to make a motion that the budget that would be presented to the board be a balanced budget with no increase in the tax levy.
You've already put a project in there and that it can't be a balanced budget. In order to pay for that project, that'll be expenses over and above the revenue. So we wouldn't be able to do that.
Which project? Because I thought that these were supposed to be coming out of the fund balance,
right,
not out of the budget itself.
Right. You can't take them out of fund balance unless expenses exceed revenue. There's no way to take it directly out of fund balance and say we'll do that separately. So it has to come out of.
But do we have projects already approved in next year's budget that use fund balance?
Yes.
Which one?
The athletic project.
I thought that was the current budget.
Part of it will come out of the current budget, but I think most of it will come out of next year, depending on how fast we get going on in the billing and so forth. It certainly won't be done this year.
I understand that, but I thought funds were committed out of this year's budget.
Well, there are some. I mean,
We
whatever
brought that
isn't
forward,
done
we
this year will
talked
be
about
next year.
whatever we could out of this year's budget as well as next year's that would have to come out of. We were very clear about that.
Well, we have a motion, and I know there's discussion going on, but I think we need a second before we have discussion for whether it's for or against. Is there a second to Mr. Alexandrovich's motion of a balanced budget with no increase in tax levy? Hearing none, the motion fails.
Can we discuss any other elements of the budget at this time?
Yeah.
On the aid increase, are both of those dollar amounts ongoing, or is that $75 one, when it's outside, is that a one-time, or is that going to continue?
It's whatever the legislature tells us.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. That entire piece of aid only started last year or the year before, so it's new, and I think that one, if anything, could go away on a whim of the legislature, but they seem to be sticking with it, I think because they didn't like how it turned out when they added money to the formula, and then it got distributed to districts that they didn't want it to go to, of what the legislators didn't want it to go to. They wanted it to go to their districts, and that's not the way the formula works. So now they're doing it on a flat basis for everyone, which is making the distribution of school aid less equalized in that it's evenly going to everyone, districts that have plenty of money as the state looks at it, and those that don't.
Is that because it's on the credit? Is that what you're referring to? It's distributed based on the bill, tax bill? Or what do you?
No, I mean, that would be another way of doing it too. They've done that in the past. But through the equalization aid formula, they tried to add money. When they added a lot of money last time, it didn't work out the way they wanted. And legislators complained, and then they, I think, figured out a different way to do it so that all districts would get something. So for that reason, it may not go away anytime soon, but because it's outside the revenue limit, and it's new, it's a little more iffy.
Our recent project work that we're doing, the stadium, the concession stand, these capital improvements, how does that factor into the per pupil or expenditures that are part of the aid formula? Is that included in expenditures per pupil? All those capital investments?
Yes.
It is?
Mhm.
Okay, so that helps to raise that then.
Right, that would increase
And that's a
that
good thing?
temporarily.
And that's a good thing.
In the aid formula, that piece of it wouldn't be a good thing. It would be, we'd be spending more, but on the other hand, we're coming in under budget and then adding those things after the fact. So we're coming in about even on that so that we're not overspending because of those. If we had spent the entire budget, every dime of it, and then added that on, we'd probably get less aid because of it for the next year. And then it would correct itself the following year.
Is that how you see 15-16 shaken out? If 14-15 budget has expenses in excess of revenues, which means you're using fund balance, would the 15-16 be affected by that then, or not necessarily?
In some ways it could, but I'm trying to work around that in many ways, trying to keep the other expenditures in check, and then working with some of our other funds to try and make it as smooth as possible over that time. So we don't have many tools to do that, but that's one of the things I'm working on, so that we don't see big changes.
Because on the one hand, it is an expenditure that goes away, so there is a
Right.
huge advantage in that it is a one-time
Right.
project. The benefits, you did mention the increase, 4.5%, but how does that compare to this year's budget? Budget to budget change, what are you expecting in the benefits?
We aren't that far in the budget to be able to tell you. I mean, I'll be able to tell you in June, but if going apples to apples, it would be the 270,000 or whatever I had on there, based on the census that we had at the time.
Well, we had budgeted for something higher, correct, in the current budget? Higher than 4.5%?
Right, and it didn't increase 4.5% yet. It was actually a decrease of 0.5%, something like that, in the first 6 months, and then there was that happens July 1.
And,
Why would that happen July 1? Thought it was an 18-month
Two
budget.
contracts, 6 and 12.
It was a 6
Oh,
and
it was
12.
two contracts, okay.
and, you know, the projects, the big ticket items, when will we hear about them in terms of, whether they're in or not? I know we're doing a big technology push. How is that going to impact budget?
Yeah, you'll hear about that in June, when we talk about all what's in the budget and what the technology is. I don't even have that budget yet. I mean, we're working on the budget now, and that's kind of the whole point. We'd be back in June once we have all that, and that's one of the pieces. that we'll get, but I haven't even seen that budget yet.
And as far as the equalized value, you're saying it's based on last year's change, so we know that already, what happened to our district. We don't have to project that forward.
No, don't have to project that forward. We know what happened to us. We have to find out how it relates to everyone else, and then we'll find out where we fit in. But in this case, the loss of value helps us aid-wise.
Is there any way for you to come back on May 14th with any type of update further than what you have now, or you still won't have enough numbers?
No. I really need time to work the budget and get to that point, and then we'd be back with that.
When we talked about the benefits, I asked a question whether or not we could requote the benefits at any time during this 18 months. Has there been any thought to requoting for July 1?
No.
To see what the market is offering us?
No, there hasn't been any talk of that. Have you seen something in the market that would indicate that? I mean, we could check with our consultants and see what they're getting.
Not necessarily, but we were extremely kind to the teachers as far as what kind of increases we went with on the out-of-pocket visits and I want to say stop loss, that's not the right term, but the deductible. I mean, they were hardly raised at all, and there were some major savings that could be generated if we pursued that further. I just didn't know if there was any thought on that.
No, we had bid it out, and that is kind of what we're looking at staying with.
Have we ever thought of using a different agent other than Horton?
We did look around and interview a number of different groups. They look to be the best for us, and as I talk to other districts now, many districts are looking to get rid of the groups that they have because they're charging way too much, like 2 or 3 times what we're paying for the service, and they're asking us for information on Horton because they had heard good things about him. So, not really. I mean, we're open to suggestions.
I did talk to the agent that we work with at work, and he said that she's very, very good, very knowledgeable, and knows what she's doing. I just didn't know if we had ever looked in that area.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I know the renewals that are coming in this year do have that Affordable Care Act kicker, and there's a 4% increase just as a result that's triggered from the plan. And then there was another kicker override. I know, and I'm with ADP Total Source, so it's a nationwide program. So I was 7% in the hole right out of the gate. So I think that was one of the reasons why they pushed for a 6 and a 12 when they did, because now we're locked in till June 30th of 15. Whereas if we were to look at renewing now, we're going to see those triggers. So I don't anticipate a real smooth and rosy renewal in another 10 months when we look at it, or a year when we look at it, and probably April for the July 1, because all that's going to be in place already. So you never know, but I would be very surprised if we'd come in something better than we have right now.
You have a fully insured plan? Because we're self-insured at work.
Oh,
and-
yeah,
and
no, it's fully
We are
insured.
not getting hit with near.
Yeah, that's a
Any
little
kind of
different
increases.
animal. Yeah, that may not be an apples-to-apples comparison, yeah.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Mr. Mason. Item 9D is the softball field discussion. Dr. Pats?
We provided the board with a little bit of information, background information on this as part of the master plan. In taking a look at the events that are taking place over there, when I'm saying over there, I'm talking about the high school with the whole area landmass and so on and so forth, and the availability for our girls. We have a little bit of an issue in terms of where they're playing right now over at the city. There's the, well, we've heard again that that's going to be used as a staging place for the Emerald Ash Borer, so that may vacate that particular process. But nonetheless, we had in our master plan the land and the space availability to create a girls softball diamond, which would be just to the north of our existing baseball field. We looked at it. We had mentioned a couple of numbers that we might be able to try to do some things, and Jim, I'll let Jim speak to that in just a minute, but we are recommending that the board allow us to move forward with the construction of the softball field. And within that it brings in all the elements that are in the baseball field too. That when I say that, I mean dugouts and a scoreboard and those kinds of things. What we'll get our hands around, if it's approved by the board, is being able to say, in alignment with the construction that's going to be taking place with the field and the track, this might add a benefit to us by having that equipment, if you will, and the workers on board and so on and so forth, and may assist in the bidding process as well. So with that, we asked Jim to move forward to talk with the people, our architects and our engineers and so on and so forth, to see what we might be able to do in terms of bringing that project to fruition for you to consider tonight. And so, Jim, I'll let you take it from there.
The construction firm did an estimate for us, and there are a couple of things about that field and the location that aren't ideal for building there. It fits on our site, which is fabulous, and we're able to use it based on all of the delineations of wetlands. The field has to be dug down a little bit from where it is now, because out in the outfield there's just a little bit that the 100-year flood line comes into the field, so we can't fill that in. We have to have the rest of the field taken out to be at that level. Well, it's part of living with our beautiful but not so usable site over there is that's driving up the cost somewhat on making that happen. And then it creates where we need to hold back some earth with a wall and put in some, to put in the bleachers and so forth. So there's some things to work around, but it does fit, which is the good news. So the total estimate was $475,000. As I indicated, we're hoping that it comes in less based on the fact that we're doing so much work and similar work at the site already. But we won't know that until we get the bids back to see where it all comes in. So we're hoping that happens. It makes sense for that to happen, but because it's a bidding process and it's a project with kind of a short timeline, we're not sure that it will. But as Dr. Pats mentioned, it has the dugouts, press box, all of those things attached to it to make it a nice field and equal to or better than the baseball field.
When did you expect this field to be completed?
The field would probably be completed in the fall, but as far as playable, it would not be playable until at least the next spring, and then there would be a possibility, depending on how the grass and everything comes in, because the same instance we have with that is the same thing we're dealing with on the new practice fields. We're not going to allow people on those too early, because it'll just tear them up, and we'll be going back and putting a lot of investment into re-getting. So it's going to be difficult, but we're going to manage this fall, and if we have to wait one more year. So to answer your question, maybe next spring, but that's a maybe. That would be ideal. If not, it would be, well, in the fall when there isn't a softball season, but certainly usable for Phi Ed and so on.
So when are you expecting to bid this?
Immediately.
And it will be bid in conjunction with the stadium, or is it a separate bid?
It would be an addendum.
Addendum?
to that.
So we're using the same construction manager?
Right.
How far is the grade? I mean, how many feet approximately would it need to be sunk?
Pretty good.
So the dugouts will be literally dug out,
Yeah,
pretty much?
it's going to involve retaining walls and some of those kinds of
Okay.
things.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to add to the appeal of the site.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, as far as, there could be, as far as bleachers and spectators and so forth, they'd be looking
They'll be
kind
up
of
above
down
them.
on the
Yeah, it'll be nice.
field.
Yeah, it'll actually be nicer as a spectator because of that.
So there'll be no lights, is that correct?
No.
So I guess, help me understand then, so we're digging out dirt for that field and moving it still on site? Is there,
Well, there's
Is
going
there
to be a
needs for a
combination of things,
stadium?
because we'll be digging out football field dirt, and we don't know how much that will probably have to be hauled off-site, but if we can use it for fill, anything that we can use with existing materials on site, we're gonna use on site. Anything that we have to get rid of, if we have good topsoil, we definitely want to keep that and use that in our different fields, which would include the practice fields. But we anticipate on our football field that we're going to get down there and find some not-so-good soil. A couple of our soil borings came out with not ideal, which means we got to dig it out and fill it. So we'll be swapping fill, we'll be adding fill, we'll be, you know, those kinds of things.
So you're expecting there's not a net hauling away, though? It's all going to be...
Well, we could end up having to haul some
That's what it
stuff.
looks like?
It could be, yeah.
Or digging
We
out.
just don't know.
Will the dugouts be done by construction or built by our students?
They'll be done by the construction. And you know, like all the projects, anytime we can involve our students to get them to work with construction people, we've done that, just to get our kids sort of involved in working with these people so they get some skills or at least knowledge of, if nothing else. So if we can use them there for different things, we certainly would. But for the most part, we want this to be get in, get it done, and do it right the first time, and while they have all the equipment and so on there.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve this project as it's described on the printout or the information that Jim provided, but I like the cost, though, to reflect the fact that it's being combined with another project. So I would make a motion that we approve it for $400,000 to reflect that this is being done to take advantage of the timing and to take advantage of the economies of scale and to, you know, take advantage of the timing, basically. And I think we should reflect that in the cost estimate and the approval of the project.
400,000 or 475 as he estimated?
For $400,000 to reflect savings, as we were told, that would be generated from doing it in conjunction with the stadium.
You mean then come back if we need more money?
That's always an option, I'm sure, in any project that they do, they can come back.
I'll second that motion. We have a motion by Mrs. Witkowski. Can you repeat your motion? So that's
Motion
clear.
to approve the softball field project as described on the document that Jim provided with the revised estimate of $400,000 to reflect savings generated from doing the project in conjunction with the stadium project.
And a second by Mrs. Evans. Is there any discussion?
Jim, I didn't think you had an estimate from anybody yet. This was a swag, so to speak.
I think the estimate itself is pretty good. Again, you never know. We're bidding it out, and when we bid it out, we'll find out what it costs. And the construction manager is hoping that these groups will reduce the price or that it'll come in better in total because there's more work to do, but there's no guarantee of that, especially since we're telling them they have to be done by a certain date. It makes them nervous, and they're not sure. They know they have to put more money on it to have more crews there to get it done and stick with it. So I don't think we could say that we're going to save $75,000 because of the bidding. If you wanted to approve it based on the winning bid amount, we know it's something we want to do, we need to get done. So if we approve it based on the winning bid amount, if it's 450 or if it's 400, then we can go with that at the time, and we don't have to stop and say, well, we can't give you the contract for that because it's over. Now we're backed up again. We need to come back to the board. If you're in favor of the project for the best bid that we get, then I hope that we could word it that way, that the amount of the winning bid would be the amount that's approved.
Would you amend your motion on that?
I think that as a board, we should set what we're willing to spend on the project up front. if you want to come back and with the bid and then ask for approval of the project, but I think as a board, we should go in with a scope in mind and a dollar value that reflects that scope.
That really puts us between a rock and a hard place, because now we got to play the game of coming back to the board all the time. And I think we have demonstrated to this community, and certainly to the board, that when we bid things out, we never go over, we don't add to it, or we just don't say, well, let's make sure we crank it up to $475,000. I think we always take a look at the bids, and whatever that is, that is. And like Jim said, there are too many unknowns to go in and say it's $400,000, because it could be more than 425. And then we have to say, wait, and then we have to come back to you, and then we have another decision to make, and then pretty soon that puts the projects further behind. And if we got crews working on both those that are the same companies, if you will, all of a sudden it really it does not do us any good to have that kind of a restriction on us, because the restriction itself is on the bids. If we have the $475,000 estimate and it comes on at 423, then it's 423. But, and that works better for us, and I'm just stating how we traditionally operate. If we go the other way, where we say, here's your limitation, and now we will think about approving more as you go along, and we come back and say, we had to have more dirt hauled out than we anticipated, and whatever the issues might be, and we have to say, well, we can't do that yet until we go back to the board, and if it's a week or 2 weeks or whatever it might be in between board meetings, it puts some hamstrings on us, to be quite honest with you. So to Jim's point, I think, you know, if you were to, the board would consider just saying, we'll go with the bid amount not to exceed 475 or whatever, something like that. I don't even know if that's a good idea. But I think the way the motion stated is it makes it difficult for us to proceed.
Actually, I'm hearing with what you said, that you'd rather see with the lowest bid number rather than a dollar figure.
Right.
I understand Linda's point, that we have to have some kind of parameters. I mean, the guy can't come back with 800 and then just go, oof, okay, here we go. So there has to be some kind of limit, but go with the most reasonable bid. When do you think you'll get getting these back? Weeks, days?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I think it would be a matter of a week or two on that, hopefully, that we'd get that. And perhaps we could go, you know, that way as well with the motion that it would be the winning bid or not to exceed 500,000 or something like that, in case it just comes in crazy. Or you could use the 475. I mean, that's fine too. I think it's our estimate of what it would be at this point. But we don't want to get into that. We can't award the project and then these companies take other projects in the meantime, and then our field gets put back, or we're in that position. So if we could do something along those lines, you know, that would be fine.
Will you be reporting back the winning bid to the board?
Yes.
I personally don't think that that's a problem to set a budget. I mean, we set budgets all the time, project budgets all the time, and it's not, it's just what's done. So I don't understand the resistance here. It baffles me, but, you know, it's my opinion, and that's how we practice our budget control. So, and you have told us that there is savings here. That's why we want to do it now. That's why we want to do it in conjunction with the stadium. You're telling us that. That's one of the reasons we're going ahead with this. It's a good time to do it.
But you have to remember, when we make that statement, it's savings compared if we had nothing else going on, and we come to the board, the product, it wouldn't be 475,000.
I just want you to reflect some savings from the 475, and I would accept any number that you want to throw out there. But I think if you're telling us that we should reflect that. And it doesn't have to be 75.
I guess I just wouldn't want to guess at what the savings are going to be.
The whole budget is
and
a guess, Jim.
Right. And the reality is going to be that winning bid. So that's what I'm saying. The winning bid is the reality of what it'll cost to get this done. And that's where we'll be, and that'll be our budget. I understand setting a budget. I don't understand setting a budget 75,000 less than the estimate with no reason or handle for doing that. As I stated, and I'll do it again, we hope to realize savings because they're being done at the same time. We should realize savings because they're being done at the same time, but that's up to the bidders. If all of the bidders come in and it's above that, and they're more afraid of the timeline than they are of not getting the project, then we aren't going to save any money, even though we should have.
You did say we're going to save some money though, correct? The scenario is set up to save money.
The scenario is set up to save money.
And
Mhm.
so 5%?
I don't have a percentage.
You want to budge on that?
No.
Okay. Well, the motion is for 400,000. I guess we can vote if anybody else wants to.
Is there any other discussion?
Are we looking at the timeline to be the same completion date as the stadium project?
Not necessarily, because we won't be playing on it.
That's what I figured, so we'd have a little bit of buffer on that.
But we anticipate having to use that area for construction, possibly for construction access and so on. So as we do everything, it's going to have to continue to be built up. So by fall, it's going to be done. But we have a deadline, a drop-dead deadline for the field and the track of August, well, first part of August, early August. We wouldn't have that for the field because the other stuff has to be done first. And plus, we would have to take trucks through that area or use some of the fill from the football areas to go over possibly to that area. So it may lag behind, but it will be completed in the fall to be able to be used in the spring.
I think it'd be the last project completed, the finished grade, would be the
The
last
finish,
thing
yeah.
done at that site, because that's the last
Yeah,
thing out.
fencing and scoreboards and that stuff would be the absolute last thing that we're doing there.
But if you look at the way projects are done like that, generally a company will want to get all the heavy grading done and then get their grading equipment out so that they can make money someplace else. So they're going to want to be working on the whole thing at the same time. So even if we said it doesn't have to be complete and it comes down to fencing and scoreboards and all of that can be added later, they'll want to get some of that heavy work done to begin with so that they're kind of on the same track, knowing that they have to get the football field done first. I mean, it has to be done. And that field, there could be some pieces of that lag.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Mr. Nielsen?
No.
Mrs. Larson?
No.
I'll say no. Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yeah, approve the plan.
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mrs. Klein?
No.
Yes.
I
Motion-
would make a, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Motion fails, 5-2.
I would make a motion to approve the softball field as laid out by the administrators, with the award going to the construction company that comes in with the best bid.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Schluter, any discussion?
So there's no dollar amount set?
No.
Whatever the bid is what we're approving.
Whatever the best bid is, yes, that's my motion.
Could I ask you to qualify that by saying the best acceptable bid?
The best acceptable
Because we could
bid.
have some
Okay.
less than desirable company come in and lowball us, and as we check
Oh.
and look at their credentials,
Yeah.
may not be anybody we want to work here, so we want to have that outlet to be able to say,
Okay.
uh,
The best acceptable bid as deemed by the administration.
Can I amend that to say not to exceed 475 without additional board action?
Second.
Okay.
okay with that? Did somebody second and say okay?
Yeah,
Tim?
Tim
Yeah,
Nielsen.
475.
So we have a motion to amend by Mrs. Witkowski, second by Mr. Nielsen, so we need a vote on that. All those in favor say aye.
Discussion?
Oh, any discussion?
I just was going to talk about the acceptable bid motion makes sense, especially on the low side, because you can be some really low bowing. But I think we'd like to have some other downside protection too, in case the only one you get is 650,000. I think that's worthy of further board discussion. You know what I mean? So I wanted to have a number on the high side to protect the two, and I think using the 475 as the estimate makes sense, seeing all that number that you came in with.
Wasn't that part of the, to go 475, and if it's higher than that, to come back to the board?
That was not part of the original motion, it was the most
Well, I mean,
acceptable
Linda's
bid.
amendment, wasn't
The
it?
amendment
Yes,
was
amendment.
475, yes, that's my discussion.
Any other discussion?
I would just agree with Mr. Nielsen.
All right, we have a motion by Mrs. Witkowski, second by Mr. Nielsen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On the original motion, there's a motion by Mrs. Larson, second by Mrs. Schlueter.
Question?
Yeah.
And what budget are we funding this in? Are we amending the budget? Is that what we're doing?
This would fit in the same position as the rest of the stadium project. So as they get going, some of it would be funded out of this year, some of it would be funded out of next year, and it would be a project that's earmarked to come out of fund balance if we end up using all of our budget next year, I guess is the best way to state that.
So I guess, why don't you put it in one budget and just carry it over? I don't understand why you floats between two fiscal years.
Because we're coming to the end of a fiscal year, and we'll fit everything in that we can into this year as far as what's done and what's billed. And then beyond that, the rest of it will be in next year.
But doesn't it impact aid formulas and other things? Because you don't have a firm, don't you have to divide things between
It's not
fiscal
based on,
years?
the aid is not based on what you budget, it's what actually happens. So it makes no difference for aid.
So if you were to expense it all in 13-14, take the hit to fund balance now, and that really wouldn't make a difference between doing it that way or splitting it up between the 2 years, is that's what you're saying?
Right. They go with actual expenditures.
And you just line up the budget to whatever the actual expenditures are? Because there has to be a budget authorization, correct?
Right. This year, we're kind of seeing whatever happens, but whatever happens at the end of this year, we'll know, based on the bids we get, how much is left for next year. So that'll be a solid number on what will finish out the projects next year.
Any other discussion? Okay, motion by Mrs. Larson, second by Mrs. Schlueter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Where are we? Okay, board retreat discussion, and we're bringing this back to set a new date because of cancellation for tomorrow. The intention is to have all board members present at the retreat, and so now we're looking into May.
Can I say something, John? I think there might be a little bit of confusion too. The May 5th date is also off the table, so we're starting at 0 right now.
Oh,
We have some conflicts, so
no,
the May 5th date is off the table, and based on what the board had wanted to do with the agenda, I'm not so sure that we couldn't do it in one session, but I think we can take a look at that after we do that first session. But so that's why we're here tonight, to see if we can get a date done where everybody can be available.
Starting with that week of the 5th, or is that week out, look later?
Well, I guess we're going to have to go around the table here.
Just go down the list and.
I've only got, on that week, I've only got the 7th and 8th available, or Friday the 9th for me.
I'm available the 8th.
I can make the 8th work.
I can't do the 8th.
I can't do the 8th either.
Okay. Is anyone not able to do the 7th?
I would be available on the 7th. huh?
7th works.
Yeah.
Available.
7th, how about this end?
I'm good.
7, Helen, 7 good? Debbie?
What time are you thinking of starting?
6 was what we had for the last one, but we can, whatever the board likes.
The earliest I can make it be 5:30.
Let's say 6.
Yeah, but 6 is still.
6 o'clock on the 7th? Everybody?
Good.
Well, I have something until 6:30, but I guess if everybody can make it.
So that's confirmed then? We're on for Wednesday, May 7th at 6:30.
Okay.
I mean, 6.
Is 6 going to be okay, or you want to do 6:30?
You can do it at 6:30.
You can do 6:30.
Fine by me.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
Okay.
Is the plan still the same, to bring a facilitator in, or are we
Yeah.
just going to work on objectives?
Yeah, I'll contact him tomorrow to make sure he's available.
Should we have an alternate date in case the facilitator's not available?
That's a
or would
really
you
good
look for
idea.
another
Yes.
facilitator? Given how difficult this has been.
I would ask if that doesn't work out, if we could look at the week of the 19th. The week of the 12th is really bad for me all the way around.
Okay.
I'm on vacation.
The 19th?
that
I'm out
week.
of town.
Okay.
16th through Memorial Day.
Okay. And even the week of the 26th is fine.
Well, we have a board meeting on the 28th. I can't on the 27th. I can on the 29th or the 30th. I don't know if people want to do stuff on Friday. And 26th is Memorial Day. So
I can
You
do
said
the
you
29th.
can on the 29th?
I can on the
29th.
29th.
29th works for
Did
me.
you say yes?
I can on the 29th.
You can, you
Yes.
can.
29, Debbie?
Sure.
Okay, that'll be our
That's
backup plan.
Looking that I can make that, yes.
You can?
I can, yeah.
You do? So 29th, is that a backup or is that our second one?
That's the backup.
Mhm.
Still at 6 or we go to 5:30 on that one?
I guess Tim's at, push you at 5?
I can make 5:30, that's fine. I'm probably coming from the closest, so that's no
How
problem.
about everybody else? 5:30 or 6?
But I know we got the people coming in from
Sure.
It makes no difference to me.
Sunday.
It's your son.
Will 5:30 work if that's a backup necessary? Okay.
All right, so we have the 7th and the 29th for backup. All right, thank you. Item F is the treasurer's report. Mrs. Bukowski.
Yes. As of April 17th, 2014, cash balances in the general fund are $12,997,144, and the debt service fund, $2,994,860. Prior to May 28th, we anticipate cash requirements in the amount of $4 million for the April 30th and May 15th payrolls and accounts payable.
Are there any questions? All right, thank you. Item 10 is, I'm looking to entertain a motion to enter closed session to discuss employment and performance evaluation data for named District Franklin Education Association, FEA, members and employees pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 Sub 1 Sub C and 118.22, and to consider enrollment application of expelled student. Do I hear that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Klein. Is there any discussion? Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Witkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Klein?
Aye.
I'll say yes. Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yes.
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute recess, and we're in closed session. Thank you. Okay, we're back in open session, and I'm looking for a motion, to non-renew,
Did you say to approve the
yeah,
non-renewal?
a motion to approve the non-renewals as recommended by the administration. Do I hear that motion?
Excuse me, Ms. Evans, I think it would be more appropriate to move that the board approve issuing the preliminary notices of non-renewal as recommended by the administration.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Alexandrovich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
I'll say yes. Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes?
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
And Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. 6 yes, 1 abstention. Thank you. I am also looking for a motion to deny the application of an expelled student to Franklin Public Schools.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Schlueter. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Mrs. Klein. All those in favor say aye. Oh, is there any discussion? I'm sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you. Item 12, board meeting debriefing. Are there any comments on the meeting today? All right, hearing none, we go to future agenda items. The oath of office and election of the 2014-15 officers will be held on our board meeting on April 30th at Franklin High School. And then we have curriculum review and process update, one-year implementation update, May 14th. Any other comments, Dr. Pat?
And not necessarily a comment, just something to put on your radar. We would like to try to organize a groundbreaking ceremony the first week of May. We wouldn't do it till like 5:30 at night or so on and so forth, right down in the field. We'd like all of you there, obviously, and we get the coaches and so on. We're still waiting to coordinate this a little bit with, some of the committee needs to be there and so on, so if you could all make it, that'd be great, and it wouldn't be very long at all. So we'll let you know more on that. I should know something another day or so.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'd make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, second.
Second.
Mr. Nielsen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention. We are adjourned at 7:32.